Welcome to episode 68 of Cyclops is Waiting for Me, an X-Men the Animated Series weekly recap podcast and our X-Men 92 finale. As you know by now, I'm JC.
And I'm Rod, and we're so thrilled to introduce our special guest tonight, the reason why this podcast exists in the first place, Eric and Julia Lewald.
Hello.
Hey, Rod. John, how are you doing?
Doing great. Thank you guys so much for being here. Obviously, everybody who's listening has heard us mention your name hundreds of times over the course of this series. But real quick, if they're not following you for some reason, where should they be following you guys?
If folks are a fan of the good old X-Men, the animated series, I'm on Twitter way too often at X-Men TAS. That's for X-Men, the animated series. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. We have a web page that's more, it's a blog. It's more like an archive at this point. But please, reach out, find us. We're happy to try and communicate, and we're happy to sell you a couple books while we're at it.
And also pins and hats at Comic-Con and stuff like that.
And if you want us at a con near you, please let the folks you know near you that you'd like us to come. We'd love to go.
Speaking of that book, that book has been invaluable to this show. John has read it cover to cover and referenced it in just about every episode.
Yeah, that's great news. Thank you.
You know all our secrets, though.
I don't read very well, so I haven't been reading it. But whenever I'm like, hey, what about that? And he's like, oh, there's actually a quote about this.
My favorite chapter is the wit and wisdom of Beast, where Eric went through every episode and pulled the quotes of Beast. So yeah, there you go. If you need a quote of Beast, there's a whole chapter of Beast quotes in the book previously on X-Men.
That has been one of the more referenced sections. Like, where did you get that from? Cyclops is Waiting for Me is our weekly podcast series where we're going back and watching every single episode of the original 1992 X-Men the animated series in the original intended script order, building up to the release of X-Men 97 coming to Disney Plus later this year.
Some quick reminders. We're a recap show about a series that started now over 30 years ago. There are gonna be spoilers. If you don't want this episode spoiled for you, pause the podcast, watch the episode, and come back. We don't have to worry about spoiling anything for future episodes because this is the last one of the series. We are currently not sponsored or affiliated with Disney or Disney Plus in any way, shape, or form, and we made it through the entire series without that happening. Good job, Rod.
Yeah, we cursed just enough. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Cyclops IWFM on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and Facebook. And of course, make sure to follow us on all your favorite podcast services. If you want to support the show, we have affiliate links and all the uploads too. These include Eric's previously on X-Men, the making of an animated series, which we reference constantly, like we just said. X-Men, the art and making of the animated series from Eric and Julia, which JC has a signed copy of, sitting proudly on his coffee table.
Yep, upstairs. But now, on to the show. Today, we're going to be talking about Season 5, Episode 10, titled Graduation Day. Originally aired on September 20th, 1997, and sits at an 8.2 star rating on IMDb. Before we dive into it, anything that you want to share about going into this episode, love to hear your perspective on that.
Well, if I can jump in just to clarify who I am and who Eric is.
Please.
Eric gets all the credit for being the develop for television by guy on every episode of X-Men. I guess called showrunner.
We didn't call them us showrunners 30 years ago, but everybody got a different credit. But yeah, that's what they call us now. But yeah, so Julia was one of the writers, and yes. I was the supervising guy.
Yep.
And so I was, although she since we lived together, she was around for all 76 episodes, even though she only took screen credit for 2. She did come up with a couple of the others and was around when we developed every single one of them. So it's almost like she was there the whole time.
I was kind of a fly on the wall, and when he says I was around, it was because X-Men the animated series was such a cheaply budgeted for various reasons. It was a 4-company co-production. There was no big pot of money that magically appeared to make this show. So when these magic small bits of money came together to make enough money to make X-Men, there were no writers' rooms. There were no offices for the writers. It was our dining room table where Mark Edens and Michael Edens would come over to our house in Glendale, sit with you and me around the dining room table, and just vamp about, well, what would the X-Men series be? I don't know. Let's talk about it.
The way that was different from a lot of shows, I mean, a lot of animated shows didn't have writers' rooms. I mean, this is something that seems very common now in primetime, but in our situation, it was simply Fox told me I needed 13 episodes that season. Writers would pitch me ideas. I'd pitch the ones I liked to the network and the ones that they and Marvel signed off on, although Marvel didn't have the final say, interestingly. They were a smaller company, and they were just thrilled to have something on TV. So, I mean, if they didn't like it, it would often go on. But the bosses would say, yeah, that one works for us. And then I would pick a writer like Julia, and she'd write it, I'd polish it, we'd hand it in, and we'd go next. So it was like 76 little movies that the individual writer wrote, and there were not 8 other writers punching it up or giving ideas for the show. It was just basically me and the writer for all of them.
But to emphasize, you were drafted to take the X-Men, the 30 years of X-Men comic books, and come up with an animated television series. That was you doing the heavy lifting to make that happen, and you were only given an order of 13.
Yeah. Oh, tell her to stop.
No, this is amazing. Please.
But yeah, some people don't know that well is that there had been no Marvel movies. It's 1992. There had been no real successful, certainly no X-Men shows on television. There'd been the Marvel animated shows they tried, kind of hit and miss.
And the last ones were like Spider-Man from the early 80s at that point, correct? Yeah.
Right. And so no one in Hollywood really had any faith that this was going to be successful. And our boss, Margaret, who's wonderful, who made it happen, basically put her job on the line. They said, if this doesn't go, we're going to fire you because you're insisting on putting this thing on. It doesn't look like any kid show we know. And we were all hired for 13 episodes, all the creative people. And we finished like in July or August, and all the writers and artists were let go. And we went off to work on some other stuff in the meantime because, we needed a gig. Right. And while we were waiting for January to come and for the animation to get finished, because it was all hand painted and it took months and months, we didn't know it was going to be more than one season. And they were, the contract said, they didn't have any faith that it would be. So that's really weird looking back that they just said, well, nobody knows who these X-Men are, and superheroes don't, comics don't work on TV. And, so it was an odd revelation when suddenly it became this immense hit, and everybody, age 2 to 90 was watching it. And literally we'd see these numbers, like half the TVs, or more than half the TVs in America at that time were watching our show. And it was quite a revelation, given the fact that we all loved doing the first season, but we all did it under this weird cloud of, well, knock yourselves out, but this doesn't look like it's going anywhere.
Right.
And
so,
just want to, I think you mentioned Margaret Lesh. Just want to give her full credit. Margaret Lesh, the then president of New Fox Kids on Saturday morning, deserves all the credit for saying, I will risk my job on this. And she did.
That's amazing. Yeah, and I noticed that in previously on X-Men, like you mentioned that, and weirdly enough, my current boss at my day job has worked with her and says nothing but the greatest things about her as well. From back in he was on the Spider-Man, like one of those teams. So yeah.
No, she made it all happen, and that's in I don't know what it's like in other jobs, but certainly in TV. You're doing your creative work for somebody,
right?
And a lot of places, a lot of shows, we would have liked to have maybe done a little differently or pushed harder, and we were told to dumb it down or simplify it or cut the rough edges off. And Margaret was always, no, it needs to be more challenging. This is great. This is, I want every. It was a real gift. She and Sidney Iwanter, who was her right hand man, who was in the trenches, giving us notes. I mean, Margaret had to run the entire network. Sydney was the manager of 5 or 6 shows, all the boy action shows, as they used to call them. And so both of them had that same idea. They said, well, this is Hill Street Blues. This is our prime time. We want this to be something that any adult can watch and want to watch again. And again, nobody else we ever worked for gave us those instructions. So
right.
we're really grateful.
So it's kind of a miracle that we're here, long story short, talking to you about the last episode of a 5-season X-Men run, when originally there was no guarantee it would go past 13. So that's kind of fun.
Yeah, and Ron said something similar, that all the instructions all of you were given were to not punch down to kids. And it worked. And, we've been talking about what's currently happening with the writer's strike in Hollywood and like how important the writers are, because with you guys, with the stories and stuff, like that's really what kept everything going, because we poked fun at some of the animation glitches and like little things, and but that doesn't deter anything. I think most of us prefer that over like most of the X-Men movies that were made. I don't know how much, you probably hear it a lot. All that any of us from our generation wants is for your show to be made live action. Just use it as previs.
Literally, your writing of the Phoenix Saga. I just want to see that with real life actors. If we get a third one in motion picture mode,
You guys did it twice, like successfully, and Hollywood has literally failed at it twice with the same guy. I don't know him. He's probably a nice guy or whatever, but like, man, that was painful to watch.
Yeah, I don't know. I think we were close to the spirit of the comics. I mean, it's such good source material from Claremont, those stories. But I know there's a lot of pressure that goes into $200 million movies.
I can imagine.
And we didn't have the time to rethink and adjust and say, well, maybe we can do something a little different with the story, or do it this way or that way, or worry about opening, week's grosses. We looked at his story and just carved it down to what we thought was the core of it and ran with it. And that just, it's so nice to look back and realize that all this happened so fast. We had no time to rethink anything, and that it came out well, as opposed to, oh gee, if we just had another few months on this and a double the budget, it would have been so much better. It actually, all these people that were enthusiastic about the characters and enthusiastic about the comics, it bursts through in the writing and the drawing, and everybody. I mean, the people cutting it and everybody involved was, Ron. I mean, the people doing the music cues, which there was pressure all around to do stuff more cheaply, because X-Men is a very ambitious, for the time, show. It's just very expensive to draw all that stuff. Now it's a lot easier to make bigger spectacle, but back then spectacle was very expensive. Right. And to their credit, the production people, the Grazianos at Graz Entertainment, Stephanie and Jim, they somehow held it all together and brought us, so much more on the screen than they had the budget for. And we kept on pushing them, then they kept on pulling their hair out and saying, oh, you've given us, twice too much to animate here. Well, we just kept, please try. And they held it, when we did that production book, we were in awe of how all the people it took to just get, a couple minutes of animation together and have it work at a basic level. It's not as beautiful as Batman. It's not as slick as modern stuff, but they made the episodes work.
So I do have one specific question for you before we get into the episode itself. So, like you mentioned, original order was 13 episodes. Then you went to getting 4 seasons, and then you got a final season. So you effectively had to do a series finale 3 times. What was the writing process of that? Because I've done writing for TV. Rod has done writing for music. I cannot imagine trying to conclude a story 3 times.
Well, I think the first one was easy because we hadn't imagined that there'd be 60 more stories. So it was, okay, we've committed to this thing with the Sentinels at the beginning, the first couple episodes, and we've strung it through a bit. And so if we just resolve that this one problem about the people running the Sentinels.
So 11, 12, and 13.
Yeah, so 11, 12, and 13.
Days of Future Past Part 1, Days of Future Past Part 2, and then the 13th episode.
Final solution.
Right, yep. So it's like a 3-parter almost.
You guys also did better than the movies did, hands down.
So that one wasn't that much. That one, I think Mark and I were pretty much thinking about from the time we did the pilot, from the time we just started out. The next one, when we were trying to end the show with Beyond Good and Evil, Sydney had come to us and said, come up with some big 4-part spectacular to blow out and end the series on. That was a disappointment. That was a quick professional, fall on our swords moment where we had set it up to where all these characters were leaving, all the new ones were coming in to replace them, and trying to set that all up in the stories, and then find out that we couldn't end the series this way. We had to keep everybody the way it was. That took some rewriting. Luckily, I think there was enough spectacle and enough I don't know what it was about it, but it didn't seem to bother people with that story, even though we were disappointed that it wasn't what we had started out to do, that we had to fix it midstream and not do what we wanted. And the last one, as you know, you've seen in the book, the last 11 episodes were an afterthought. It was frustrating. Margaret was gone. Larry Houston was gone. We were still trying to do the best writing we could, but even our editor was gone. Sharon Janis was gone. So there was suddenly this. It felt like a little bit of a vacuum, and I think the 10 episodes before that were just, okay, here's 4 or 5 stories, and we're just going to know in our mind that the last one we do, we're going to try to get everybody that's still alive and kicking and important to the series back together in one story. And that was the only real agenda we had on that. And I don't remember who suggested that it be in effect, we're going to kill it, or it's going to be Xavier's funeral, because that's what it really was. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I think I thought that up. I don't want to take credit for it if I didn't. Someone hit me, later if I did. But so that was a really
rage on TikTok. Someone's going to stitch it, be like, Eric, leave off a liar.
Right. But
we're not on TikTok.
Yeah, so
it's a
30
good
years
decision.
But so yeah, that was the ending story. Was a very simple story. We wanted just to have a few things happen early in the story to get us have him injured, to get all these people together believably, so that they could say goodbye to the man who meant so much to all of them. It still makes us cry.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the more weekly animated episodes. There's not a lot to the story besides Xavier gets hurt, people care about him, they get Magneto together and they wave goodbye. There's not much more to the story than that, but it still makes us cry when he gets to say goodbye to everybody.
We're going to start choking up again. I'm sorry.
So
I want to give credit to writer Jim Krieg.
Yes.
It was one of his...
It was his first it was his only script.
His only script for X-Men.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Like, hi, Jim. Welcome on board. We're ending the series. Here you go.
And he has since gone on to be like one of the preeminent Batman animated writers for all the movies and things like that. So, but that... Yeah. Jim, that was his one script for X-Men was The Great Swan Song. I think that's amazing.
I will confess, I went into the season. People who listen have heard me talk about this before we went into the season. It's like, oh boy, here we go. But now that we watched it, pretty much every episode we've ended with like, you know what? If it wasn't for the animation, it wasn't as bad as I remembered. Like the stories actually kind of worked out. Like they weren't like, including this one. John told me before, like he was like, I just watched the last episode. Like actually worked pretty good, especially with like what's to come.
I think I said my phrasing was it broke me.
Yeah. And like
because I haven't watched it in 20 years probably. So
and also I think we're older now too, so the whole idea of like best friends coming together before the end, especially Magneto and Xavier like putting their pride or Magneto putting his pride aside and all that stuff. I was like, oh man, okay, yeah, but maybe when I was 12 that wasn't as like
we didn't get it.
Pressing.
Yeah.
No, that still gets me when Magneto's there and Xavier's on his bed. Surely you have better things to do than with an old friend, and nothing's more important. It's like, oh my God, right through my heart. 30 years later, still gets me.
Yeah. Yeah. And honestly, when I went back through I hadn't seen the episodes in about 20 years when I went to do their first book back in 2016.
Yep.
And I watched them, and there were 2 or 3 in that last season I thought were some of the tightest stories we did, like the Phalanx 2-parter.
Yep.
Yes.
Those guys who did 9 of the episodes, that writing team, I thought they really had a really great cliffhanger. Everything moved well, a wonderful guest star. Everything but the animation in that one would have made it one of my very favorites of the whole series.
And also the episode Old Soldiers was
Old Soldiers, so good.
Written by Len Wein, who is credited as one of the co-creators of Wolverine.
Yep.
And
of half the team.
half the team of X-Men.
Yeah.
And quick story, if you go back and watch Old Soldiers, there's a fun moment where, because it's Wolverine and Captain America during World War II. And this is sort of a look back at that time when they met, and there's a moment where they're having to go up this sheer cliff.
Yep.
Captain America opens a bag and hands Wolverine these repelling claws, and Wolverine, oh, hey, neat idea, as he starts using them. And so Len Wein himself said he didn't like the bone claws. He liked the adamantium claws being part of the skeleton he gets. So I'm just passing that along to you.
So none of us like the X-Men movies. That's what I'm hearing.
No.
I love that confirmation.
No, but I can tell you the guy I consider Wolverine's dad,
yeah,
he was not born with bone claws, according to him. So
maybe we weren't enough trauma. He got melted in the series.
So I say we could hop into the episode. Episode kicks off and we see a bunch of protesters outside of a government building, and we hear the end of the world speech coming from Gyrick. And I love seeing the references to some of those big moments, and they were all disparate and different from each other. It didn't feel like it was just like, one point in time. It's like, no, stuff has been wild for a few years now, was kind of the vibe I got from him.
Yeah. Well, I think that part of that was we look back, Jim and I look back and we say, okay, well, what touchstones can we make for our 76 episodes? And that was kind of fun. That was kind of liberating. And since the story was so simple, sometimes our stories get so involved, there's no room for anything, but they were so simple, we were able to add details like that. There was room for that. And there was room for getting all the different characters, getting like 10 people into the guy's sick room at the end.
Yeah.
But at the beginning there, it made sense to look, if this is going to be the summing up of everything, to touch base with stuff that they'd been through at different times.
So one of the favorite bits from the show for Rod that always gets brought up in our episodes is Storm dropping something like a building or a boat on top of people. Uh-huh. So I smiled because I knew Rod was smiling when he was rewatching the episode and that moment was shown.
Yeah, I was like, oh yeah, the adults in the room were like, let's acknowledge how much destruction they've caused. Because we were talking about the episode where Storm got whisked away to
the other planet.
Yeah.
And and at the end of the episode when she is taken back home, or the second episode she's getting taken back home, she's like, I can't just let him die. I was like, we just put him in a building and then drop him. Right? That's kind of your gig, right?
Yeah, we never got into the X-Men getting bills from cities for the destruction they caused.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's the whole first episode of 97 is just like the paperwork.
That's it. And then you did this in Scotland, and then you did this.
And wiped out DC several times.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Cyclops going to his orphanage and just blasts a random building with his blast. It's like, I hope that was abandoned, sir.
Yeah.
So as Gyrick is having this speech, we see Xavier arrive, and he gives the speech that I think now, even as an adult, resonates more with me of like, oh, mutants just are other American citizens, and you're treating them like prisoners of war. They just deserve to be alive. And it's like, again, Rod said it earlier, when you're 10 or 12 years old, that doesn't hit with you the same way it does now, especially with everything we have going on in the world.
Yeah. And that's one of the things I enjoyed about Xavier, is that all the other characters got to be a little bit loose cannons and have their own lives and their own agendas, but he was such a focused idealist and such a living mouthpiece for this, that it was natural for him by then. And it wasn't like we were stuffing exposition into his mouth. This is genuine coming from him, and it was his life. And so when that's what got him killed, it seemed appropriate.
And the thing that stood out to me from that was that shot of all the different groups watching. So you had the nuclear family watching, you go to the Morlocks watching, the other family that has the kid with the glowing eyes, so they don't know he's a mutant yet. And then our favorite game on the show is when a bunch of mutants pop up on screen, and I ask Rod if he knows who the characters are.
Spoiler, I don't have a good score for this. But the characters I know in the Marvel universe are because of this show, and then later the MCU, and then also, of course, the Toy Biz toys. But I learned most of my X-Men stuff through you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just so you know, so much during the season of the fun Easter eggs and cameo appearances were the idea of the artists, because the artists were crazed X-Men fanboys.
Right.
And so I'd get a call from Larry and say, well, you needed 3 people in the background here. Can it be this person, and this person? And we double checked to make sure we hadn't used them somewhere else and there wasn't going to be a problem. but it was all them getting excited and saying, "Oh, wouldn't it be fun? You just need 3 people to get blasted out of this room, but why don't we make them somebody that the fans will enjoy?" And so that, because not being an X-Men scholar myself, it wasn't me pushing all these wonderful characters to fill out the scenes. It was Larry and his staff of artists.
And
Right.
speaking of Larry Houston, who was on the art side, producer, director, artist, and just an walking encyclopedia on X-Men and a fanboy, and was able to figure out how to get that past legal, all the cameos.
Because about half of them we shouldn't
Half
have been
of them,
allowed.
all of them we weren't allowed. None of them.
Yeah.
Wait, wasn't there the loophole of Spider-Man? This is where you only saw his hand.
No,
in
you
one
only saw his
episode?
hand, but you didn't. But in the storyboard,
and in the storyboard, it wasn't described as Spider-Man's hand. It was described as just
mutant arm with web.
yeah.
And
Amazing.
That got passed.
And that got
legal.
passed because he had tried to put him in before, and the lawyers noticed the name Spider-Man and said, "No, you don't have the rights to use him."
But you've got the rights to use them. We're all Marvel, right? No.
They were all different places, and John Semper it took him a few weeks to get the rights to have a couple X-Men visit on the crossover, but that wasn't a given. That was something that took some legal action and probably a fee, and it was an odd age back then.
It still is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Rod, the ones that we saw at that point, I know you know Sunfire because we've talked about him a bunch.
But he had the
and
mask
then,
on this time.
Yeah, the mask was a little bit different this time. Tusk, which is one of the ones that Rod is a fan of because of the action figures, because he and his brother got that one. Who was the female mutant, Rod?
Wait, I remember not feline. That's not right.
Not feline.
No,
You're close, though.
feral.
Yep. So,
Feral. Okay. which I learned through the show.
yeah. So Xavier continues his speech, talking about how these people are not terrorists. They were the heroes that were rushing in to save lives. And cuts over. You see Cyclops, Wolverine start to stand up. They feel like something isn't going right. Beast mentions how this has been going on for weeks and this was exhausting Xavier, and it was finally getting to him. That's why he starts hacking up a little bit and such. And then I didn't realize it until this line was said that nobody else outside of the X-Men and a few government officials actually didn't realize Xavier was a mutant.
Yeah, I didn't know that either.
I think I've taken it for granted because I've been reading the comics since I was a kid. Yeah. But it was like, oh yeah, you're right. They've never formally acknowledged publicly that Xavier was one.
They didn't out him until that, which is odd to think back. But yeah, obviously everybody can tell Beast's a mutant, and if when they're in action, but people that Xavier fought against, but again, it was always a little bit of a challenge to get him into the action because he's in the wheelchair and it's all mental, and a lot of the times he's doing it from a plane or from his home base. So yeah, he wasn't very public in his mutancy, and this is strange thinking back that was a revelation to some of the people there in the room.
Right. And yeah, I mean, like we said, we talked on the previous 2 weeks about the Spider-Man episodes. And when Peter arrives at the X-Mansion, he doesn't know it's actually a home for mutants. They just know that Charles is an expert in mutants. And that was wild. That was like, oh yeah, literally the entire public is unaware of this. And it's such a pivotal part of who Charles is. So
yeah, because like social media wasn't around, so there wasn't like thousands of kids running around, cell phone cameras and stuff, and recording every moment. Our only little criticism of Peter Parker was like, don't you work at a newspaper? But we're like, well, he's a photographer and he's not a very good one because he only takes pictures of himself.
Yeah. So Gyrick pulls out a device that essentially electric blast sets off a psychic wave that makes it look like Charles can't control his powers and starts hurting all these other people. And that's where, essentially everything kicks off for the revolution of this episode.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was just, obviously we needed to get Charles damaged enough that we needed to lose him. And in the end, I mean, not quite dead, but as close to we could be dead on a kid's show as you could be.
Right.
And so it's a little amorphous. Who knows what's in that device, but it felt better. It felt like it was just added drama and for the moment it's not just hurting him, but it's hurting him in a way that unleashes this on everybody else, which he would never want to do, of course, which he would control. And that it made it more poignant for people that cared about him. It's like, not only is he suffering, but he's hurting people he never would want to.
Yeah, and you know, obviously with standards and practices, you were never going to be able to have somebody shoot him with a regular gun. And if you did have that, he wouldn't have set off that blast that hurt these other people. So
I didn't really appreciate this as much until like just recently rewatching it older and stuff. And I don't know how intentional this was. And we reference this movie a lot. I don't know if you guys have seen Get Out. John hasn't, but there. So, you know,
I've still never seen it.
Yeah, and
it's really good.
I'm not even worried about spoiling this for him anymore, because you know, at the end, like when he finally gets out, you know, of the thing, and then the police arrive, or you think the police arrive, and it's like all they see is that last moment. So like, I'm, you know, obviously Asian American, I grew up in Indiana, and that is like a really common thing with people who are marginalized. Anybody that is like not on your side will just kind of keep prodding at you until you pop, and then only cite the moment, you know. So I feel like that's with Professor Xavier. It's like he, like you said, his entire life, like we watched him from what, like the 50s or 60s or something, like promote peace and stuff. And then there was like one moment where some guy just like popped his balloon, and everybody's like, see how insane he is? Like, you can't control him. Like, you can't, it just like really hit home, because that's still happening today. You know, like we see like news and social media, you see someone be bigoted, like, see how these people are or whatever, but you didn't see like the lifetime of microaggression or poking and prodding or whatever, you know, up to. So it was like, I felt like now watching at 40 that little device, even though it was like kind of a quick like reason or whatever, is like that symbolized like all of that. Like I explained like the here, you know.
Yep. And then Gyrick gets pulled away, and then you give us one of the most like heart-wrenching cut to commercials ever of Wolverine saying he's smelling him and it's too late.
That was, I was like, oh my God, I'd forgotten that moment too. It's like, whoa.
It's funny those moments, because you know, you're right, we couldn't show people really dying, we couldn't show people really badly injured, but to me one of the most horrifying moments was when Morph dies. And he
really died. He really died.
He really did.
Right.
We met him too the first season, and he's in the middle of this thing, and he blasts, and you hear him yell, and then cutting to these close-ups of people's faces as they sense that he's not there anymore. And it just was really, really creepy. And looking back on it,
powerful.
The guys drew it beautifully. Sharon cut it beautifully. It just was all this thing about, well, something's happened, and the audience senses that something terrible's happened. And you go through all these characters that meant something to Morph, and you've shown mean something to Morph, and they all sense he's gone, and that was great. That was horrifying. And so this is not quite as powerful, but it a similar thing where it's too late.
Yeah.
I think 12-year-old me right before the commercial begged to differ. Then we had to watch cereal commercials. Be like, wait, what happened?
Yeah, that is the one thing that I think gets lost of watching this on Disney Plus, you know, decades later, is it's the cut to commercial, and instantly we come back and they're on the Blackbird, and he's in horrible shape, obviously, but he's still there. So we see Gambit is flying, and then one of our favorite notes to put about any episode is Scott yells. Because Scott yells a lot in this series.
It's like an angry dad.
Yeah.
Put that down.
Beast explains that luckily Wolverine was wrong, that he is still alive, and they hail the mansion, make sure to get the med bay ready, and to get Moira on. Cutting over to Genosha, we see Sunfire and Farrell again. We also see Mariana, the little girl from the Morlocks, who is there as well. So loved spotting her.
Yeah.
Because I know like some people say that is one of their like lesser favorite episodes. Yeah. I honestly always loved the Christmas episode. So I have positive sentiment for her at least.
Oh, great. Because you know, that was awkward, and you're right. There are about 8 people that say, oh man, that one just clunked for me, but they're the 2 people that say, I watch it every Christmas.
I remembered that episode so much more than the majority of season 4 and 5, honestly. Like, that's one of the ones I remember the most. So,
and that's a lot for John to like that episode, because it ends with a pun, right?
And I hate Christmas, so.
Well, because it says like Merry Christmas, the Merry Xmas.
Oh, a quick side note there, just because we lost Norm Spencer over the course of COVID, the voice talent for Cyclops. And I never got to meet him in person, because all the voice talent was up in Canada. You got to speak with him when you were doing the interviews. Yeah. But we heard from everybody that he had this amazing singing voice, and so like when they'd be goofing around, he could just beautiful singing voice. When you go back and watch the Christmas episode and he's singing, it's Norm Spencer having to sing poorly, but that's the irony. The only time Cyclops sings in the series, he's singing really badly, but Norm Spencer himself did really sing well.
It actually wasn't that bad. I think whoever was doing like audio mixing and stuff, what they did to make it bad was to put the music in a completely different key. Like the underlying music for it.
And one of something that none of us knew because we weren't there at the recordings in Canada. I mean, we get them. We weren't in the room. We'd get the finished recordings, and we'd hear how nice a job they did.
Yeah.
But evidently, in the room itself, Norm was the funniest guy in the room.
Oh, really?
It's just really crack everybody up constantly, and that's Cyclops. You just do not think of him as that at all.
Yeah.
But the actual actor was just evidently funny as hell.
Oh, that's awesome to hear.
Yeah.
Especially how much we hated on him in the last year and a half.
Well, it's never been the voice actor.
Yeah, not the dude, the character.
Scott is sometimes frustrating. We see Sunfire and Farrell are talking, and essentially, they want to stoke the war. Sunfire has been talking to the mutants around the globe, and that's where we get the big reveal that Magneto is there and is the leader of Genosha, because we haven't gotten a ton in that final season about what he's been doing. It's been a little ambiguous in that final season.
Yeah, I think it just was a case of we were, as I say, it felt like such an afterthought the season did that we were just thrilled to get the 11 stories locked, and and if we were light on people like Magneto, or if there's some stuff that didn't connect as well as it did the first, the 65 episodes, we did focus so much. If this had been at season 2, we probably would have built towards Magneto's presence in Genosha in some other episodes. That would have been fun. But you're right. At this point, it was like, that served the purpose of finding him and getting him to help Charles. I'm not sure again exactly why we put him there, but it's been too long to remember in the story.
But I think it makes sense that he'd be leading not the renegade, but he'd be leading the mutants, or trying to.
Yeah.
Who would hope to would take over, or the other side, as it were.
So jump back to the mansion. We have Storm, who's attempting to comfort Jubilee, and we've joked sometimes that Jubilee got left behind a lot. This was the time where it's like, we've already seen her start to prove herself in the most recent season, going with Beast to South America and stuff like that. And it's like, she's not a kid anymore, and she still feels like she's being spoken down to. I think a lot of us all related to that, because it was like, if there was the sick grandparent or stuff like that, you never got the real answer until they realized you were an adult. So
yeah.
And depending on what age you were when you started watching the show, it ran over 4.5 years, 5 years. So the audience was kind of growing, perhaps faster than Jubilee, but at that same moment in their own lives, like you said, sort of, come on, tell me the truth. What's going on? Honestly, I can't handle it.
Yeah.
And even if it wasn't for her actual numerical age, just the atrocities she has seen since joining the X-Men, I'll just grow you up fast, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because in that, one of the, season 4, where she's learning how to drive. So we got her at 13, and at most she's mid 16 at this point.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
What is to me the great episode? God, she's been kidnapped. She's being held on stage, and she goes, "What did we ever do? Why do you hate us? What did we ever do to you?" And the line is, "You were born."
Yep.
It's like, well, okay, that's it right there. That's it.
That's one of the best single lines of the entire series, no doubt.
I remember even as a kid that hitting me a little hard, because I mentioned me and our family was one of the only Asian families in our area in Indiana and stuff. And I remember these kids at McDonald's making fun of me and my brother. And this was in the 90s. And Jubilee being probably one of the few, if not the only Asian American character on TV. And so however old I was, 12 or 13 or something, hearing that and just having that incident happen at McDonald's or whatever, oh, wow, okay, that's why that happens. It was kind of an answer for me and my brother. My brother's 5 years younger than me. And so we're just okay, so that's why that happens. There's just people like that.
Yeah. Oh, God. Yeah. Oh, heartbreaking.
Jumps over. We see that Moira is telecomming to check out the readings and stuff like that, and says, this is beyond anything for our medical science, and Beast gets the inspiration for the Shi'ar, which again, as a long-term X-Men fan, it was great to bring them back because they're so important to the comics and they've been a massive part of the show. But it was like, okay, we're bringing everything back in for this one.
Everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody. Yeah.
And I would also like to point out, you mentioned telecomming. I like to think of predicting Zoom.
Right.
There's a lot of stuff.
Can you hear me now? No, you're muted.
Can you hear me if I talk to you this way?
Right.
Telepathically.
Halfway across the galaxy.
Yeah, there we go.
And we get the reveal that Jean, unfortunately, can't reach out to Lilandra because of the unique bond that Xavier shares with her. Back to Genosha, Sunfire is getting increasingly frustrated because Magneto hasn't said anything at that point. And that's where Magneto shows up on the balcony and just gives this amazing speech about the revolution. And it was like, that is a leader. That was such a great, strong moment. And it's now, because of series like this, when I read Magneto in the X-Men comics, that is the voice that is forever in my head.
Sure.
Same way with Wolverine and Professor X. Professor X, maybe you get a little bit of the Patrick Stewart influence, but Magneto forever is the animated version for me.
And Apocalypse. Let me just toss that in there too.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
You guys have the best version of Apocalypse, too. I'm just going to keep that.
Yep.
But I will say the voice talent on the cast was lightning in a bottle. So many things could have gone wrong. So many things had gone wrong. But those voices, they're the ones I hear when I see any kind of X-Men material. And so shout out to all of them.
And Storm is my favorite, X-Man in general. And so forever, anybody that's cast, and no disrespect to Halle Berry or whatever.
Right.
But
Oscar winner. Yeah. I'm not gonna
at the same time, she's not Storm, because to me that Storm was established in the show as being this Shakespeare, all of them very Shakespearean, regal and stuff. And even when she's funny, she's serious,
Yeah.
In the first season of the show, I had this thing going on where every episode, here's a Storm giving some cold truth to someone.
Yeah.
There was a point where Professor Xavier's oh, I failed, and then Storm was we failed together. Okay, Storm, not helping right now. Love it though.
And speaking as a woman in the room, and a woman who was in the room 30 years ago, I am so proud looking back on the way gender was handled at that time for a kid show on Saturday morning. It wasn't an issue. Storm had the greatest powers, and she could fly. So, come on. But
Right.
that didn't pull any focus from any of the other X-Men. All the characters were treated equally in the best way possible.
And I think we even made this observation in the first episode that the first action we really see are with all the female mutants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They start. They
Yeah,
take
the
everything
big
off.
fight scene is them fighting the Sentinel, and the guys don't show up until the tail end of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, because Gambit's off buying cards at the card shop.
Actually, you were trying to get a date, wasn't it?
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
he was, yeah.
Doing some
Flirting madly with a cashier.
Heavy come on to the cashier.
So Magneto's speech has inspired this group that want to start the revolution. And we cut to the news, and you see there's mutant uprisings around the world. Detroit has the National Guard. Hong Kong has instituted martial law in Tehran. And we actually saw Warpath up there on the bridge, which, I mean, we've talked about this in early episodes, but Warpath was in the original group before Morph was.
Right.
So it was a nice button on Warpath to see him there, even if he didn't have a speaking role.
I bet that was in Larry. I bet that was very conscious on Larry's part to say, look, we were going to have him in the pilot. We didn't. We had his evil brother in the titles.
Yep.
Let's finally use him after not, denying him for 75 episodes. I'm sure it was in his head.
There was the Magneto graffiti, which I distinctly remember because I fell out of comic books right around the time when I got into 8th grade high school, and I didn't get back in until after I was graduating college. And it was right around the time the Magneto was right campaign was going on, and the Magneto graffiti, I was like, they basically set this up in the show that other writers would then be able to leverage in the future.
Viva Magneto.
Yeah, Viva Magneto was a great one.
I think the thing is, as we get older, we're not that we say that Magneto was necessarily right, but he wasn't not wrong.
Yeah, no, it's wonderful. It's wonderful to have the main adversary be somebody, your main hero, loves and respects.
And vice versa. That is
Right.
actually mutual and legitimate. It's not
such
artificial or forced.
such a gift, and we just ran with that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's okay. Versus, I mean, you've seen some of this stuff. A lot of comics. It's just okay. It's a wrestling match. Who's going to beat up who this issue, and that just was not what was going on between these two guys.
So we see Xavier, I'm using air quotes on an audio podcast, is on screen and basically saying for everybody to stand down if they thought what they saw happen to him, he wants them to take a peaceful route. You see Trish Tilby, who gets her cameo appearance, saying, Xavier's words haven't really done that much. Rod, who's Trish Tilby?
I didn't write that name down because it's been fruitless the other times, but I don't know. No, there was that episode with the Guthrie family, and I had written down every name that you guys put in that thing,
Except for the Guthries.
Yeah,
he
except for the
wrote down
Guthries.
every other character name, but left out the Guthries.
I know the girlfriend everybody's jealous about. So, but I don't know. No, I don't know who Trish Tilby is, but I remember hearing that.
So I was assuming the Larry Houston inspo for this. Trish came from X Factor number 7. That was her original appearance. Whoa. She was a reporter in that story.
Oh, okay.
So all-time favorite, though, is Rod forgot who Maverick was about 7 times until the Maverick episode.
Yeah.
And then it was clear.
There you go. Yeah. Not a problem.
Right.
Oh, but since we're also using air quotes here too, again, we're predicting the future. You got a little serious deep fake stuff going on there with Professor Xavier on the TV, talking to the people.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, folks, we knew it was coming 30 years ago. We knew it was coming.
It's already happening. They're warning. I had to warn my parents about people deep faking voice phone calls and stuff. I was like, Mom, Dad, if you don't see my number on that screen, don't.
No, seriously. We were fortunate when X-Men came out and ran its course. There was no social media because the crucifixions that might have happened with angry people, angry fans, just it would have gotten so ugly. Instead, it got to be something people rallied around and enjoyed and grew up with. And now we can have the conversations about the show. We can't change anything.
Right.
We can't change anything that happened. It all happened. It's done. But we're happy to talk about it and have those conversations and can do that in a more collegial atmosphere. Thank God, because we didn't have social media then.
And just guys, we've been to 6 or 7 years of cons since we got started to work on the first book. Month in and month out, we have never had one snarky question.
Amazing.
That's awesome.
That's incredible.
It is. It's really nice.
That's how nice. That's how much love there is out there for the show.
Oh yeah. I mean, at LA Comic-Con, I came to the panel that you guys did, and that room was packed. I got there right at the last second, and it was like there was one seat left in that room, and it was just the happiest group of people to hear that conversation. So
thank you for that.
And I like to think in the story too that when Trish said like this doesn't really help anything, that it furthers the point that Xavier was special in himself and not just his appearance.
Yeah.
So because it was more of like saying the words that he would have said, he just still didn't have the thing that Xavier did or whatever.
Yeah, that natural charisma that Charles exudes. Morph is great, but he's never going to be Charles.
But also, it was great to bring him back, for the grand finale. Like you said, I actually forgot that he was in this episode. I was like, oh, cool. So yeah, he's still alive and not as damaged as last time.
Not as damaged. Correct.
Yep.
Yeah.
So they're trying to figure out the transmission to get to Lalandra. They figure it's going to take up to 9 months to get there, and it's a pretty dour moment. And then I wrote this down in utter shock. Cyclops asked Wolverine for advice.
I think everybody was shocked by that.
Yeah.
Including Wolverine.
Yeah, no, that's you got to love. That's one of the things I love about TV series versus single movies. I mean, I grew up loving movies and came out to Hollywood because I love movies so much. But there's this thing that you've earned after 50 or 60 stories where you can get a moment like that, and everybody that knows these characters has been through this with these characters. It's this huge thing. Whereas if it's just 40 minutes into a movie, it's not that big a deal. But if it's 40 episodes in, oh my God, we've lived with these characters for 5 years, and now he's having a moment that I never thought he'd have.
Right.
And that's a gift for TV writing that feature writers don't get,
Yeah, you get that in long form, you get that in TV, you get that in comic books. To your point, in a movie, you would have to. It's like getting Avengers Assemble. If they said that in the first movie, it would have never had the same reaction that broke theaters when Endgame came out.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's so hard to get to that many movies to ever get that level of a payoff.
Yeah.
Cyclops tells Wolverine that essentially there are a bunch of mutants that are all traveling to Genosha. They know they need to stop Magneto. Otherwise, this is going to, continue to escalate. And if they don't have a leader, then it stops the war. And then we get Jean, who pops in. And I love Wolverine's reaction to it because he's just completely shocked that she's there. It's like, she's the one who could read the minds of everybody in the mansion. Yeah. And especially if you're stressed, she's vibing off that. She knows you're not having a good time right now and is hearing all the inner emotional screams that you're having at that time.
Yeah, she was great. She was like the glue that held the heart of the team. And when we were first writing the first season, she wasn't somebody that either Fox or Marvel thought was that big of a deal. Wolverine was exciting, and Cyclops was important, and
Storm
was spectacular, and Jubilee was our young person. But we kept on writing more stories, and it kept on coming back to that. All the people would come back to Jean when there was a problem.
Right.
She was this mother of the whole place that just had a relationship with everybody that nobody else had. And so she just became really important. Before you even get into Phoenix, she became, to us, to the writers, an important center of the team that we hadn't imagined before we started writing.
And I did learn from the show that the only time you don't want to be around Jean is when she's in the kitchen at Christmas, because she was not having it with Gambit.
Oh, no, she wasn't. She she shut him down.
Yep.
In the Spider-Man episodes, we were talking about like why they sent her away, so that she wouldn't be the easy fix for the episode or whatever. And they're like, well, maybe also like she's gone through like 2 Phoenix things right now. And they're like, let's not tempt a third and put her around any radioactive things or stress or whatever for a little while.
Yeah.
So Jean insists on going, and essentially, again, we interpret stuff differently. I never would have understood early on, not planning on coming back. It's like, oh, they're literally saying they're going on a suicide run right now. Like they do not expect to survive this. And it was like, okay, this is going to keep hitting.
Yeah, I didn't catch that before. Yeah. And also like the nuance in the conversation where like, I think Wolverine was like, Psych, you got to tell her not to go. And he's like, I already tried, It's like,
it didn't work the first time.
Conversation. Yeah.
Yep. They hop on the Blackbird, they take off. Wolverine goes into very traditional Wolverine mode of like, well, these could convince him, and he pops his claws, and they're like, well, maybe we should try to keep him alive. It's probably going to be easier to convince him if he's not dead.
Yeah.
Part of me was thinking too that was to help preserve Wolverine's life, because he's like, well, you're made of metal, so maybe that would be the only thing that wouldn't stop. So maybe you put those away. Don't remind him.
Yeah.
So we get to Genosha, and you could see that Magneto is expecting them, and they jump out at the right time, and he straight up destroys the Blackbird without hesitation.
That was a moment. That was okay.
Yeah.
Boom.
Like,
done.
Okay. Yeah. This is the stakes are rising here, but still, okay. Everybody's still in the back of their mind. Do they have an answer for Magneto, and do they have an answer for Charles?
Right.
So, yeah.
And the quote from Magneto there was great, basically saying, they were worthy adversaries, but they were never going to be a part of our world. He has that deep respect for the X-Men and what they've tried to do, but he considers it a failure, so he has to do it his way, especially after seeing his friend get attacked and such. So, of course, we get the reveal that Jean has a little bubble, save him, but it's also a very rough landing.
Yes.
Yeah.
No.
Wolverine can heal instantly. He could technically just splat in the ground and give him a few minutes and he could reconstitute. But it was.
Would standards and practices have let you do that if you had put that in there?
Nothing close.
No.
You only get one splat in the series. You already used that previously.
Yeah, there was the episode with the Guthrie family, which was one of the ones where one of the wikis that we reference for trivia facts and stuff like that actually had the breakdown of all the requests of standards and practices. And I was like, I can't imagine, like, because that was only one episode, and it was easily a page worth of notes of like, oh, this person can be on screen, but you can't see them holding a pitchfork pointed at somebody, like all super specific stuff like that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
But in this moment, for the last episode, we need to give a major shout out to Fox Kids broadcast standards and practices person, woman named Avery Coburn, who her word was law. And
Right.
even more than Margaret Lesh. It was not going to get on the air unless she approved it. And she was dealing with all the same Saturday morning issues, any other animated show was dealing with, but she understood X-Men. And it wouldn't have made it this far. It would not have been the same show, and it would not have made it this far if not for Avery Coburn.
Yeah.
Although in the second season, there's a whole running story of the folks in the Savage Land, and those were all written separately so they could be interchangeable with whichever episode came back that was appropriate. Point is, all those were written up, got sent to Avery, and there's one moment that I found it in a file somewhere, but the memo that Sydney and you got back from her, there's a moment, chaos is happening, and a dinosaur falls into a volcano while some big fight's going on.
Yep.
And so the fight's going on, and she's writing about the fight, and she goes, I'm going to need to see the dinosaur climb out of the volcano safely. It's like,
I love that.
what?
Yeah.
It's like, it is a dinosaur, and it's a volcano. No, but so that was the kind of thing that could hamstring you.
And there were occasional things that slipped through because there weren't supposed to be any blood, but we had a little bit on his bandages.
Yep.
One
Wolverine's
time.
bandages
Yeah.
early
Yeah.
on. Wolverine slugging Scott in the pilot was about a week-long discussion. And
That is my favorite GIF on Twitter to use. I will send that to Rod at least once a week,
Yeah.
probably.
and,
Yeah, and just non-X-Men related stuff. I'll just say something inflammatory to John. He'll be like, hey.
and so Avery understood this. He said, "Okay, well, you're not going to get to do this again ever in the series, but I understand it's about his grief. It's not about the fact that he gratuitously just wants to hit this guy."
Right.
So those are the kind of adjustments she made, because initially she said, take it out.
Yeah.
And there were hundreds of things like that she'd say to take it out, and I'd gently try to persuade her with a long memo, say why it was important in context. And 90% of the time, we'd come up with something that worked for both of us and that didn't ruin the moment. So
Right.
to her credit.
That's awesome. I love to hear that you were able to work through and find something that you were still happy with from the creative side, but also wasn't going to get you in trouble too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they make it into the mutant camp, and then we see another cameo, which this was one of the characters that when Rod did not know, I was shocked, because Rod loves Mortal Kombat. And there's a character named Forearm who has four arms like Goro from Mortal Kombat. You could actually see Mortal Kombat playing on the screen behind Rod's head right now. He has the arcade cabinet there. They're walking through the camp, and they get spotted by Sunfire and Feral. And I think we take a little bit for granted today that the X-Men would be the most prominent mutants on the planet, but because the internet was so nascent back then, it's not like you're seeing this person's face plastered in front of you 10, 15, 20 times a day. If the X-Men were real today, the amount of stuff that I would see on Twitter and Instagram with them would just be, it would be terrifying. I would be scared constantly, I feel like.
Yeah.
But I looked. It was kind of realistic though with his whole thing where he's like, I haven't seen you guys around here before. It's like, wait, no, I have. You caused a lot of trouble last time you were here.
And then there were a few cameos from the Mutant Liberation Force. Don't worry, I'm not going to expect anybody else to know those names, but I will make sure to thank Larry next time I see him for putting those in there. And then Magneto pops up, and that provides the distraction, and he gives the "It's time" speech.
Yeah.
They go up, and they go into the metal melty fortress of Magneto, which I kind of love the difference between what you saw in the Phalanx episode, where you had a very high tech base, and then you move over to this, and it's like essentially a metal cave. It's not a fancy. It doesn't feel like a leader or a dictator. It feels like a revolutionary. Like it has a grime to it.
Yeah.
They start a little bit of a conflict there, and it's one of the only fights that we see in the entire episode at all. The metal furniture gets thrown against all of them. Cyclops is like, no, we just want to talk to you. We're not here for a fight.
It was important. Obviously, we needed some excuse to get Magneto into the last scene there, but it also felt right that he was needed to get through to save Charles. His participation was needed to save Charles.
Mm-hmm.
And then they give the reveal that he's actually dying and they need his help, and he instantly just stops. It was like,
the world can wait.
Yeah. Everything just was record scratch, and he's like, why are you still fighting if he's dying right now? And Wolverine gives because he'd want us to. And it's so many emotions get captured in this episode. Like I know my voice is getting choked up when I'm saying some of these lines that you guys wrote during it. So
actually, now that I'm thinking about it in real time, like, was this an intentional dichotomy of like how Professor Xavier, as flawed as he is, his like theology and his whole spirit still carried on in the X-Men, even though he wasn't there. But the whole thing with Magneto is if you took him out, then his revolution would go away.
Yeah. It's funny. It's like we wanted to show that Xavier had affected the X-Men enough that it would go on without him. And I hadn't even really thought about that, but I tended to think of most of the villains or most of the people that might have been sympathetic to Magneto as being kind of free agents, and we didn't care. We didn't know them and care about them as much. Right. There may have been some of them that would have gone on if Magneto was killed and carried on his vision, but we didn't really get to know true believers that followed him. They tended to be more lone wolves, whatever. Yeah.
Was that a conscious decision at the beginning? Because in the comics there was obviously the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, and those were never as closely associated to Magneto in the show. They were kind of working like with Mystique or as their own separate entity, but they were never his like henchmen. Like we got Toad, Blob, etc. in the books, the way you guys took it a different direction, which was great.
I think for Mark Edens and me, as we were laying out a lot of the stories, we were really drawn to him, and we were drawn to him as a really strong character, and we were drawn to him as Xavier's best, bromance.
Right.
I was going to say there's a lot of tension there.
Yeah, all those things. And the fact, it's almost like if he had a gang, if he had a posse along with him, to us, it kind of distracted from how intense and wonderful Magneto was all on his own. So I think we didn't consciously say, well, let's keep these other people out, but we didn't know the books very well, and we didn't know that some fans might miss the fact that he was the leader of groups, and the people did follow him. But yeah, I think we were drawn to him as a loner more, and
a leader, but
a leader as somebody that could lead a revolution, but not as part of a group.
And that actually segues perfect into, as he's realizing all of this, he has to question himself, what is his priority? Do I lead this revolution, which is everything he has literally worked up to from when he was abused as a kid? And you guys obviously never took the deep dive into it, but when he was dealing with the Nazis in World War II, it's the most pivotal inflection point of his adult life, is which way am I going to go here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because he already has all the troops gathered, and it's like, well, I can't regather them how many more times,
Yeah. It was good. It was good to give him a tough choice.
Oh yeah, and I guess like the little part that happened like moments before this was that he had accidentally amplified Jean's powers, because like Wolverine was like, "What did you knock me with, Jean?" And she was like, "I don't know." Like, Phoenix again? Let's just assume it's that. I don't know.
No. It feels good.
Yeah, he actually was okay with it. So. At that point, they do realize that it had amplified Jean's power. Maybe there was a way that he would be able to supercharge brainwaves, because brainwaves are electromagnetic, which I don't know if I had seen that up until this point in the comics. I remember in the mid-2000s, there was a Grant Morrison run of the X-Men comics, and they figured out, if he wanted to, he could just pull people's blood out from them. And it was like
iron in it. Okay.
Yeah, because it has the iron in it. Yeah.
Well,
it's like, he's so dangerous, it's unreal at this point.
Yeah, I have no idea if at that point we cared about the science or even the comic books level science of what Magneto could. It really fit the story, that he became an amplifier, and so we ran with it.
To hear you say that, because as a kid it didn't make sense to me. But now older me watching is like, and hearing you say, they talk about the scheduling and stuff, is like it was really just like a scheduling thing, right? Like the rush and everything. Like other than that, like it does work, now that I'm watching it again.
Right. So they have the moment of, it's his greatest enemy, it's his only friend, and I believe it was Cyclops who asked, wouldn't he do it for you?
Yeah.
That was a great line.
Yep. So now we're going to get to the hardest half page of notes that I have written down in this entire book, which is the entire series from rewatching. Like literally there's like 5 pages left. I went through this entire moleskin writing down stuff about this show in the last year and a half. So we get to the mansion and everyone is around Xavier and they say, you know, he could go at any time. Beast essentially explains what needs to happen, explains the risk to Magneto, lets him know that he's at risk if this doesn't go well, and we see the signal shoot into space, and that's when Charles wakes up.
This was like a real world equivalent of like donating an organ to a family member or friend, right? Like it's like you're helping save their life, but both of you are at risk.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not so sure Magneto himself was.
But I mean, we said he was. We said
you said it, so I believe
That's
it.
true.
Yeah,
there you go. You're right. You're right.
And so I don't. We're cranking up the stakes there. It's already such huge stakes to have everybody around his sick bed.
Yeah.
Right.
His near death bed, and wondering if they can get through, and if they can get through, you know, what that would mean. But it was very much a planned thing from the beginning of talking about the episode, and saying, okay, he needs to say goodbye to everybody. It's like the end of the Wizard of Oz. You know, Dorothy saying goodbye to everybody she just had the adventure with, and she's looking, I don't know, the equivalent of death because she's never going to see them again. But
had anyone ever shown you the Death of Captain Marvel comic from?
No,
that was, I want to say it was the Sterling run, but it was a very similar vibe for me as a comic book fan. It was all the different heroes, so there was like Captain America and Spider-Man, etc. around him, and this felt so much more intimate because it was his team. So one of the sites that we go to for the notes, IMDb, said originally it was supposed to be a pantheon of various Marvel heroes that were going to be there. Is there any truth to that trivia rumor
For this episode,
this moment right there? Yeah,
it seems completely wrong because we didn't care. We didn't have legal access to any of the other Marvel heroes, and if we named them, they'd make us throw them out. But B, we actually didn't care about anybody outside the X-Men universe. And since we just spent 75 episodes with these people, that's going to be the intense scene. If it's somebody new or somebody that we've heard, you know, like even if it was Captain America, which we saw once, he wouldn't mean anything to Xavier. I mean, he's who's this guy? I mean, you know,
why would Mr. Fantastic matter to Charles?
Yeah. So that would be a fan fun thing in a book, but it never occurred to us to do that.
Okay, well, myth busted on that one. That's always one of the things is whenever I do the research going into the episodes, I will always try to I wonder if this is what it was. Because if it isn't written by you guys or an article that is quoting you, we always say comes from this fan wiki and comes from IMDb because, you know, it's so easy for people to make up something like that, you know?
I'll put this clip on my TikTok and I'll keep you posted on how that goes.
Yeah, the second Rod posts anything that's somewhat controversial on TikTok, his phone blows up for 3 days. It's fantastic.
It's great.
And then we get the moments with each of the characters. I would love to know, what is that? What's that like to write that? Because it's so deeply personal. There's no other way I could describe that.
We were crying while we were writing it. Yes, and it's also satisfying when you're writing it because you know you're going to get a moment. We're going to have a moment with each of these people, and Charles is so. I mean, he's a thoughtful character. He's a caring character. He's an empathetic character, even if he has to be a tough leader sometimes. And actually, in the books, he was actually. Certainly in the early books, he was more of a taskmaster, which I never we didn't really play him that way. But so I think it was emotional, but it also was really satisfying because he's the perfect guy Wolverine might not know what to say. Well, I'm dying. So what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Charles is going to be articulate, and Charles is going to be personal with each of his students. It's like Mr. Chips saying goodbye to his students. It was the perfect setup for in effect, near deathbed scene, and the thing that gets to me hardest is Beast.
I was going to jump in here. I can see you starting to choke up, but if you watch the moment with Beast has been explaining medically what's going on in the She-Ra. But we come to Beast, and then he is rendered mute by this moment, and it's Charles Xavier who quotes to him this beautiful piece about when you find a true friend, bind them to your hearts and realizing that here the professor is quoting to Beast. It's like, my
That's
God. I'm with you. We're both choking up. I'm choking up.
Now I wish we have a video of this because so everybody in the Zoom call is crying right now.
Yeah.
That was actually what I was going to ask you, is from all the goodbyes that he feels like he's giving, what was the one that hit you strongest? So it sounds like Beast is that for you.
But each one of them was so perfectly powerful for each character. I thought, each one of those, even God bless Morph, who hadn't been there terribly long since he came back, so damaged, but the professor was able to speak to him and succinctly, but right on the money.
It really felt like you guys were saying goodbye to the characters.
Oh, we were.
Now that I'm older, I can see that thing where it's like, okay, these are literally the last 4 minutes.
Yeah.
That we're seeing these characters. At that time, we thought ever.
Yeah.
And
30 years later, still haven't.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's the thing. We lived with them for 4.5 years, and you always hear about breakups with TV shows and with movies, and they become so much your family that suddenly, I'm going to my next job, and it's just okay. I'm never going to see these people again.
Right.
Never going to have to imagine what they're feeling. Each one of them feeling in the scene again. And so, there was that too.
For me, I have a hard time pulling between three of them. If it's one of those, I can't pick one because they're all so great, but Gambit hit so well because, and we've referenced this a million times, is he was the one that everybody believed would be a traitor. Despite the fact that he was on their team, they all still believed he could turn on them. So that hit, obviously, because it's like, no, you've earned your redemption of who you were. Calling Scott his son. Obviously, we make a ton of jokes about Scott in the show. Our name of the show is literally a joke about Scott. But it's like, there's something so pure about the relationship. But the one that hit me the hardest was Wolverine, because he pulled the mask off. When he pulled the mask off, that was the moment for the Wolverine one for me. I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to have to pause in between these because this is tough.
No,
Rod?
yeah.
Yeah, they were so hard to pick from. I mean, I think all of them had these moments, like you mentioned, with even stuff that you wouldn't necessarily, or I wouldn't necessarily recognize right off the bat. It's like, Gambit has to, he said how many times you have to prove yourself, and Wolverine with the mask, Beast with a quote being just change up. Obviously, Storm, I was waiting for that one. I think seeing her reaction actually was a little bit more. That might have put a little bit over the edge for me. The whole moment was just a really great. It redeemed whatever flaws that had happened in that season, for me and stuff. Because it was really, like you said, back to the writing. This is a good story, and I just didn't appreciate it as a kid.
Yeah,
we've talked about it. We'll continue to talk about the horrific budget cuts on the artistic side for the last 11 episodes.
Yeah.
And look, in the year 2023, we can all sit here and take the long view of various TV series that have come to a conclusion, and whether it was a satisfying conclusion or whether they stuck the landing or whether it was just, Looking back, and again, 25 years later, that stuck the landing, I believe, for the X-Men series. That it was so heartfelt, and we're still choking up talking about it. It was so honest and appropriate for those characters. If you'd spent 5 years watching that show, this payoff was legitimate. It was earned. It was heartfelt, and I didn't write it, but I'm very proud of it for the show.
Yeah. So after these moments, there's a quick flash, and Lilandra pops up. Obviously, we only got some Lilandra in the show. She was there for certain seasons, there for others. Did you enjoy writing for the Shi'ar and stuff like that? Because it was so high-tech sci-fi compared to some of the more grounded stories that we had in the show, you know?
It was very different. I mean, and in the first 2 seasons, we actually, their notes to the writers, I remember from some of the meetings, oh, we're not going to do anything, larger than life like that. I mean, mutants are large enough.
Right.
But the first 26 episodes, we very much thought of this as realistic and human level and grounded as we could possibly tell the stories. Out of all the 25 years of books that there'd been, and there'd been some with all that spectacle in it, we were very much trying to keep it grounded. And I think the nice thing is that when we decided in the third season to go up into space, it was a great shift because people had 2 full years of a certain tone and a certain look, and suddenly, oh my God, we're shifting a gear. And so from the writing standpoint, it was exciting and fun because we got to use a different muscle than we'd used before with those folks. The main writers for me and the main writers that were involved with it, we tend to be more loving heroic stories more than fantasy. And obviously the two overlap a lot. So the spectacle of space is not like, oh, wow, they're in space now. To us, it's always the character story, no matter where the location is or how spectacular the powers are. It comes back to the character story. So that wasn't that much of a shift for us, but I'm sure it was for the audience that suddenly this grounded group of people, like suddenly getting a telescope and suddenly you're out in the, it was nice that I probably supercharged just that third season into thinking slightly differently about the tone of the show is all.
Right.
It just, it gave us a new avenue.
It felt like a very natural progression, though, to your guys' credit. Pretty progressive at the time. The joke about the MCU until, like, the last few years is that only American white people are superheroes.
Yeah.
But, like, in the animated series, like, it was everybody to begin with. And, like you said, in the third season, like, oh, there's also outer space. So if you think people on Earth are weird, like, there's some more craziness happening out there,
Yeah.
And the whole thing with Lilandra having that connection with Xavier, like, I don't know if there was any other show that was presenting to me, as a 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old, that there could be a greater connection than romance, like
a lot of people really were affected by that you could feel somebody across space that there was something super romantic about that.
So we see Lilandra, and she's probably the character redesign from the new art team that I actually liked a little bit more. I know the first time we've ever seen her was the traditional comic style, but this is a little more like, oh, she's had time to be the Majestrix of the Shi'ar. Like, she's gotten a little fancier with her gear. She goes over to Charles, puts a device on his head, and it says, it would be too late for what you have in human science, but it's not beyond what we have for the Shi'ar. She says he's going to survive, but has to go with her. And then we see that, the ship starts to take up, and you have the lineup watching from in front of the mansion, and then they all do the turn, and then you get that amazing shot of just everybody looking on, and then it's over. That
was perfect, except for the children laughing at the end. But
the Saban children laughing.
We've had ongoing issues about Saban's calling card at the end of these shows, but it was, that you talk about sticking the landing. As much criticism I've had about any of the weird episodes and stuff, like that was like a really great. You screenshot that, the background of your computer,
Yeah,
perfect.
It's, if you just search X-Men animated series, because like we will do this constantly when making the images for Instagram and TikTok and stuff like that. It's the Jubilee pointing over Cyclops' shoulder one is like the number one result, because there's like 7 articles must have used that as their thumbnail, and then the next one is everybody standing there in that line. And
I would have thought Wolverine Crush might have been number 1, but
that's up there.
Yeah,
this thing.
Yeah, Wolverine. Yeah. We got
John got me this.
Yeah, got that for Rod, and then I have all the ones in their VHS set still not opened. I just have VHS cardboard that I have not opened next to
And
me.
a shout out to the artist, the guy that designed the boxes is the same guy that did the storyboard for that last image, Dan Wiesenmeyer.
Dan Wiesenmeyer. Yeah.
Yep, I got to meet him in San Diego, and Rod's looking off camera for the image. I bought him that, so he has it there with him.
Oh my, nice.
Yep.
Nice.
There's also I think you guys saw it on Instagram where I tried to put it in a frame. I wore dishwashing gloves and I did.
Oh, that was yes.
That was him. Yep, there it is.
Yeah, no, you with blue dishwashing gloves. That was genius.
Yeah. Which they were actually like yellow.
But you said you were able to.
I photoshopped it.
That's way beyond my abilities. I'm very impressed. Oh, just a fun sort of observation we made looking back at the series. So that big ending.
Yep.
With the mutant crew that perhaps the rest of the world knows because they've been the X-Men, they've been doing stuff. The series opens with a news report of big fight action, police cars being tossed, and it's Sabretooth.
Yep.
The show opens with Sabretooth, and it sets up that in that time, mutants, oh my God, look what they can do. This is horrifying. And legitimately so. Sabretooth is nobody's pal.
Right.
But so like you were saying, what would the man on the street know about mutants in their world? And if you saw Sabretooth on TV tossing police cars around, you might have some real issues with the concept of this. So the show set it up, I think, so beautifully from the very first episode, and then to end with Magneto there with the rest of the students, if you want to call them that.
Right.
All of them for at least that moment together. I think it's just a real beautiful bookend to it.
Mm-hmm. They're not students anymore. They graduated.
It's graduation day.
Right. Yeah. I don't know what else to say about this episode. We've been chatting through it for about 90 minutes right now, and it was just so good. To your point, it was the perfect pin on it. I do have one other question for you guys.
Sure.
But before I get to that, any other closing thoughts? If there's anything we missed about this episode that you'd like to drop, would love to hear that. And then I got what I think should be a pretty fun question for you to bring the mood back up a little bit.
But again, credit to Jim Krieg to have your first script on a series. Talk about that was a pretty high bar he had to leap, and sure did. And like I said, gone on to big career, especially with Batman. So last question for us for today. What is the question you get asked most at conventions? That way Rod could turn it into a TikTok, and anybody who wants to ask you that, you could just direct them to that so you don't have to repeat the same thing every time. No. But it's whatever we come up with in the moment to answer that. It's always fun interacting with people, like talking with you about Professor Xavier saying goodbye to Beast. And we're all talking about, he's quoting a thing to him and Beast is all choked up and not talking. Oh, my God. Those kind of conversations are spectacular to have with people at conventions and festivals. I can think of...
the two things we'll pick one.
What do you got?
Well, it's either episode or character, but I think the one to get asked about is, who's your favorite X-Men? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's the easiest one to say. And in a lesser said, what's your favorite episode?
For me, as one of the writers on the show, they're one of the sort of fun things we'd tease each other with, could you out Beast if you got to write for Beast? And that was always coming up with the most obscure quote that was perfect. And again, this was way back before the internet. Eric has
a dusty old thesaurus.
And a book of Bartlett's famous quotations that you have to flip through to find and we'd look for quotes in those things.
Yeah.
And again, he's a romantic poet with the soul of a genius. He's my favorite. Beast is my favorite. I love him.
And in my case, it's absolutely out of empathy. Xavier had all these very different X-Men. There were 20 people that wrote for the show over the 4.5 years. No writer's room, but just individuals that try somebody out, and they do great and give them more episodes. So I felt very Xavier-like through those 4.5 years, trying to keep these 20 very different people on course and focused on keeping the show kind of smooth and together. So I empathized with the daddy character in the show.
Awesome.
And
Rod?
episode.
Oh, episode. Yeah. Please. Yes.
Oh gosh. Well, I'm not going to. there's so many, but I got to say, talking about graduation day today, it's like, wow, what a way to pay off a series. What a way to pay off those characters. And then I'm going to let Eric answer next, and I think I know what he's going to say, and I will agree 100% on what he's going to say. It's a two-parter. Can I get one part and you get the other part?
Well, so it's one man's worth.
That's mine. Yeah. That is mine. Yeah.
And it was one of those things that the hardest part for me for 4.5 years was coming up with what would be a good story idea for these characters. because thousands of stories you could tell. And we end it, there's 13 a year or so that we would be telling. And we come up with one is, okay, this is pretty good. Because as soon as everybody agreed there was a good story idea, most everybody that we worked with were good writers. So there was no worry about the craft side.
Yep.
The worry was what would really resonate as an X-Men story. And so throughout a year, some would come out well, some would come out and then once in a while, there'd be this eureka moment where it just hits you, oh, wait a minute. We got to do It's a Wonderful Life or City on the Edge of Forever. We got to do one. What would X-Men be like without Charles, if Charles had never lived?
And this is Eric. He came up with this idea.
Yeah.
and so obviously, I think Richard Mueller did both of the outlines. I don't think he got credit on both, but he did one, and he did one of the scripts, and somebody else did the second script. Did a marvelous job, but it's just the concept of that. A, that was my favorite concept, and B, we both loved the flirting and the romance, and then the marriage between Storm and Wolverine, which we never saw anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
they're flirting in the picnic. They're married. In
this hellscape.
In the hellscape.
In this apocalyptic hellscape.
Would you give up the whole world?
Just to save our love. You bet I would. Why would I care about anything else?
So some question about that. Now that you mentioned that's your favorite set of episodes, we were talking about this when we were covering the episodes. Does Xavier remember that? Down there, is that what his nod was when they?
It's possible.
I'm trying to remember all the twists of this. Just so you know, this story took the longest of any story to write. Like twice as long as the Phoenix Saga.
Right.
Because all the time travel, but would he know something, and would she know some, if they come back and they've been the third future, and all those questions that drive you crazy, and there's really no answer to answer to in time travel writing. Everybody from on all this, we're asking over and over again, we're revising. But I can't tell you I think
that was a moment that was not supposed to be look, he knows, but just a little.
There was a little nod.
Yeah,
there's this look.
Yeah.
But I loved how they Storm was quiet and kind of sexy and flirty and asked Wolverine and he's getting. In the present day, and all the present day stuff was to set up this big adventure.
Yeah,
it was kind of a couple of little throwaway scenes, but the actors were wonderful in both of them. And as I'm sure you know, Bob Harris loved the story once he got the fact that all the time travel worked, and he went to Marvel and said, let's run with this and do something, and that's where Age of Apocalypse came out of.
Right, and the piece I noticed from it is because knowing what production time was for writing scripts and what the animation was going to be, some of the character designs from Age of Apocalypse made it into your show.
Yeah. We greenlit the episode in December, and Age of Apocalypse came out 14 months later. But it took so long to redo the story. It was from December to maybe July or August. We're still polishing, and they're still doing the storyboard. And Larry heard that they'd started making the characters for Age of Apocalypse because they'd had 8 or 9 months to think about it and talk about it and start building this world. So he talked to someone at Marvel, and he said, hey, wouldn't it be cool if I used some of your designs in our show? There's still time to send them over to Korea because we've been taking so damn long to get the story straight. And so we did. And so that adds to the weird confusion about, which came first. Doesn't matter. Bob did this astounding thing with Age of Apocalypse with 6 different sets of books and just took it to all sorts of levels. But just for the record, I came up with the idea, stealing it from It's a Wonderful Life and City on the Edge of Forever and Star Trek.
Yeah.
Yep.
But when you take stuff from shows you love or books you love, you can use it poorly or use it well, and it fit the X-Men so perfectly. It's just So that's the one that's still.
And you've often said, X-Men the animated series is based on the X-Men books. So the fact that but there weren't a lot of direct draws
Adaptation.
from specific episodes. I got to write one for Days of Future Past Part 1. But the fact that people remember the show so fondly is, oh my God, that was the best comic book thing. I think it was because of the fidelity to the characters, not because the stories were this one, that one, this one, that one.
Right.
But that's what you're drawing from. And then to have had that idea that could then feed the comic book world, you mentioned that being a nice
it was great because we took so much from people like Claremont's writing and the stories and the depth they'd given to these characters, and the fact that we were able to give this little spark back to Bob, and he ran with it, and that they were able to use some, because it was wonderful to give back a little.
And it's a Saturday morning kids show. I keep saying that just to really remember what's going on here. But there's a spectacular moment where you have Shard and Bishop and Storm and I'm forgetting who else in a 1950s diner. And
yes, I was going to say.
And the waiter comes up, we don't serve their kind. And Storm says, oh, skin color prejudice. That's so pathetic.
Quaint.
It's almost quaint. To which Wolverine goes, it ain't quaint. Apologize to the lady. It's like, oh my gosh, to be able to speak about that in that way, it's just a few moments, but it's like, that got addressed. That got that.
I think my comment when we were watching that episode on this podcast was like that they're clearly doing all this stuff, like using powers, holograms on the table and stuff. And the thing that the diner owner's like, no black people in here. No. Like everything else checks.
Holograms out of your fingers, cool. Yeah, we get it.
And here we are 30 years later still having that conversation. Oh my Lord.
Okay, guys.
Yeah.
Rod, before I sign us off, anything you want to add?
I mean, just on behalf of like our whole generation, thanks for giving us like our first soap opera, and like it was super meaningful stories. Like it's a bond that me and my brother are close now, but like it's something that's been an ongoing thread of like we just text each other all the time about different stuff about the show and everything. And even as recently as Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, we got to see your characters come to life literally finally.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh my God. To hear that music cue. Oh my God!
But your version of Xavier, is in there. Like, and I think it's funny because like I know like some passive fans were like, oh that's cool, Patrick Stewart got to be in there. We're like, no, it's the animated one in there because we all knew from the hover chair.
Oh, the hover chair and the green
and the music
and the green suit
yeah. And
the rays that came out of his forehead that sort of
No. I was at like a early-ish screening of that and stuff, because we had like the craziest fan base there, and it was like someone won the Super Bowl when that happened. And it's funny because it's like when you break it down, it's like visuals shifted by 3 pixels to make waves in the air, but we were like, what?
That's all we needed. That's all we needed. Thank you. Yeah.
Take a note, Fox.
Yeah. Oh my God, that was fun.
But yeah. It's cool. And, like I said, like I went into this 5th season a little like skeptical just based on like my childhood memories and stuff, but they all checked out, including this episode. I was really nervous about this episode, talking to John about this. Like, we're going to have the Lewalds on, and I don't know how it's going to go. All the gloves off, like, we all acknowledge like the animation stuff, but like I like this more than I remembered, especially when we got the last few moments and stuff with all the writing. Once again, support your writers because it breaks down to that, if nothing else. Just a reminder, everybody, we're not done. Listeners, after this, we're going to cover some other shows. We haven't decided what that is yet, but
we'll get to them. Absolutely. Well, thank you, everybody, for listening along with us. If you have thoughts, please make sure to drop them into the comments for the YouTube upload or the Instagram post for this episode. Like what you heard, give us a rating on the podcast app of your choosing. Eric and Julia, thank you so much for giving us this series. This has been amazing. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you,
so
John.
much. This has just been, and thank you, both of you. This has been very special.